starting a new quarter this Sunday. We are moving over to the New Testament. We're going to do a quarter on the book of Galatians, starting in Galatians 1 this morning. Starting out the title of the lesson is Paul's credentials. So we're looking at Paul to start with, and then we're looking at verses 1 through 10 for the beginning of this lesson. So a little bit of history first. Y'all help me out. Anything that I'll leave out. So what church was Galatians written to? All of the churches, right? So this was the one letter that Paul wrote that wasn't addressed to a specific congregation. This was one that was written to congregations across the entire province or country. So this was written to the churches at Galatia. Galatia was a large Roman province where current-day Turkey sits, and it gets its name from immigrants, actually. So the immigrants, the Gauls, came in from the west. They were forced out of their homeland, which was modern-day France, by invaders somewhere around the 3rd century BC. We will see in Galatians, as we go through it, there's a lot of correlation between the book of Galatians and the book of Acts. So we see the correlation between those two. We'll see that this morning. So we'll start off and go through the first 10 verses. I'll get on the right page. So Galatians 1, starting with verses 1 and 2. Paul, an apostle, not from men nor through man, but through Jesus Christ, and God the Father who raised him from the dead, and all the brethren who are with me. So Paul was an apostle. He makes a point to say that he was appointed by who? By God, by Jesus, not by man. Right? So he makes a point to say he was not appointed by man. He makes that point. What does it mean for him? What does it mean about Paul to say he's appointed by God, not by man? What does it mean for him as a preacher? The book talks about it a little bit. What does that mean he has? If he's an apostle appointed by God, he has the authority. He has the authority to speak for God. He's got God's authority when he's preaching. We also see in verse 2, he had others with him when he was writing to the Galatians. And then verse 3, grace and peace from God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. So this is a common greeting from Paul. In many of his letters that he writes to the churches, he says grace and peace. Sometimes he adds mercy. But it is a Greek greeting that he's using. It's very common for the Greek to say grace and peace to you. And then verses 4 and 5. So he says, Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil age, according to the will of God, our God and Father, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. So that right there, he's summarizing the gospel. That's one of my favorite things that Paul does. He often summarizes the gospel. Jesus Christ is the reason that he's preaching. It's the message that he's talking about. It is the gospel. Jesus is the good news. He is the way. He is the truth. And he is the life. We'll look at verses 6 through 9. So it kind of turns here. He says, I marvel that you are turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which is not another, but there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, now I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you other than what you have received, let him be accursed. This is the part where it begins to parallel with what we see in Acts. So in Acts chapter 15, we see kind of the other side of the story and what's going on. It's vague in the book of Galatians what's going on. He says there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. So what's going on here? You remember in Acts chapter 15, what's going on with Paul and Barnabas as they're going through Galatia, preaching to the churches at Galatia. What is the trouble?
Jewish Christians are going to bind the Jewish law on the Gentiles.
So there are Jews coming behind Paul and Barnabas, and they're coming behind them talking to the newly converted Christians, and they're trying to make them follow the law of Moses. Specifically, they go behind them teaching them about circumcision, but then they also try to force them to follow the Mosaic law. Specifically, which Jews were guilty or are called out in persisting in this custom. What Jews are strict on customs, works, deeds, which section? The Pharisees. So we see in Acts that it's the Pharisees that are the instigators. Even the ones who have converted over to Christianity, so they are acknowledging Jesus, that he was the Messiah, that he did come to save the earth, but they're also trying to still bind the old law to this new covenant that Jesus had. So obviously this makes Paul upset. He's amazed, he says in Galatians, how fast the new Christians are turning away. So they came through, Paul and Barnabas and others were coming through preaching to multiple congregations, planting these churches, and as soon as they left, they were turning away and adding to what they were being taught, and adding to what Jesus came and talked to them about. So Paul says they're looking at or turning to a different gospel. So that kind of to me shows that he's upset. He's saying it's a different gospel than what I preached to you. But he kind of corrects himself immediately after that. Says, well, not different, but it's definitely polluted or misguided or corrupt. So it's still the gospel, but they're trying to add to it, and we're not supposed to do that. So you remember in Acts chapter 15, what happens when Paul confronts the new believers in Galilee? He comes back to them and says this. And he says that, I marvel at how soon you turned your back on the teachings. What does Acts 15 say about it? So the congregation tells them, well, you need to go talk to the leaders and the elders in Jerusalem. Go back and talk to them, and we'll send some of our people with you. Go back and settle the matter with the leaders in Jerusalem. Go to Peter and the others. Settle the matter with the apostles that are there and the elders at the church in Jerusalem. And so that's what Paul and Barnabas do. So they go back to Jerusalem and they confront the elders and the apostles that are there in Jerusalem, the ones that are preaching to the Jews. So again, Paul was commissioned to preach to the Gentiles, and then he's going back to kind of sync up with the apostles that were commissioned to preach to the Jews. As soon as he gets there, a Pharisee stands up and declares that the Gentiles must be circumcised and what? What else? We're going to talk about it. Observe the law, the full law of Moses. The Pharisee stands up and says, great, everything you're doing, preaching the gospel, that's good, but you also need to be teaching them they have to be circumcised, and they still have to follow the law of Moses. So who stands up after some of the debate? Who stands up and settles the debate? Do you remember who the first one is that stands up? Peter. Peter stands up and reminds the group that Jesus came not just for the Jews, but for the Gentiles as well. He proclaims that God made no distinction between Jew or Gentile. Jesus came to save both Jew and Gentile by faith, not by works. And he adds on to it, he asks why. He's asking this group of Jewish people, this group of Pharisees and elders and apostles, why, if we Jews can't even bear the law of Moses, why in the world would we want to press that on these new believers? The burden, why would we want to put that burden on these Gentiles? So Peter stands up and kind of makes that proclamation. Who stands up after him to validate that? Remember? James. So James stands up after him. So James goes a little bit farther. So Paul and Barnabas have gone around preaching the gospel in Galatia. They're sent back because of the message that they have is contradicting with what the apostles preaching to the Jews are saying. So they're sent back with some of the congregation from Galatia. So James stands up and he says, not only do we want to teach, not only do we not want to teach adherence to the law of Moses, let's go correct anything that we've already messed up. So James says, let's send back some of our congregation, some of our people, send them back to Paul and Barnabas, go back, write a letter from the elders and the apostles, trying to clear up this matter so that they know what's right and what's not. So James wants to fix what's already been done. So the letter basically says, we apologize, we're sorry for the false teachings that you were given. They were unauthorized. These Jewish men behind Paul and Barnabas, not authorized by us, the apostles or the elders. They came teaching you something that is not what you should follow. In the letter, they clarify specifically there is no historic, there is no tradition, there's no other burden that's to be placed on Christians except what? There's one that they tell them. What's the one they give them? They list 4 things, but really idolatry. Yeah, so it's abstaining from idolatry. So the one thing from the law of Moses that God is still as serious about as he was 3,000 years ago is don't fall into idolatry. So he lists out the different things that come along with idolatry. Don't worship idols. Don't partake in dinners where the sacrifices, where the dinners come from the sacrifices to idols. Don't drink the blood, which was the custom. And don't engage in the sexual immorality associated with the worship of idols. And so Peter and the other apostles in Jerusalem send this back, and they go around Galatia and kind of pass this message along to make sure that the new Christians aren't straying away from the true gospel that Jesus came to share. If you look over in Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 23. I want to look at a couple passages that talk about these false teachers. There's a couple different ways that they come in. So this is Jesus' word. We'll look at Jesus first, Matthew chapter 7 on the Sermon on the Mount, starting in verse 15. He says, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear good fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize this." So Jesus is telling them, these prophets, these teachers that come along, look at their fruits, look at the results of their work, look at their own lives, and you will recognize them by their fruits. And he continues in verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' And Jesus replies, 'Then I will plainly tell them, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" Jesus has some strong words against these false prophets. He has strong words against those who come to him saying, "Lord, Lord." First of all, he says the false prophets, these false teachers that come to you are going to be likable. They're going to be charismatic. They're going to be easy to listen to. They're very popular today on TV. Many people will look up to them. Many people will follow them. They're going to preach a message that's easy to follow. They're going to preach a message that's all about happiness and positivity, feel-good sermons that have nothing to do with the gospel. They talk all these good things about happiness, but they don't insert Jesus. They don't really talk about walking in the light.
Except the one that said that the Lord had said it would make him happy for his congregation to buy him that.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Saw that.
That was because it doesn't good. He evangelist already got him.
Yeah. So God said he would be one too.
Divine intervention. So a lot of these that we see on TV, not all of them, a lot of these that we see on TV, they might as well be motivational speakers. They occasionally will mention Jesus. They'll occasionally preach the gospel. But if you're not preaching the gospel every time you're up there, then you're not doing what God set out for you to do. The second part of that passage is the one where we kind of have to look inwardly and reflect. Jesus says, "Not everyone who comes to me and says, 'Lord, Lord,' will get into heaven." So there are going to be people on the day of judgment who think that they're 110% going to heaven. And they're going to come to Jesus, and they think they're best friends with Jesus. They live their life. They prophesied in his name. They cast out demons in his name and perform miracles in his name. A lot of people think if they add in his name to everything that they do, that they're doing what God wants them to do. I think we hear that a lot, see it on TV a lot, and you flip through the channels, and you see a lot of the preachers in the different congregations, they waving their hands and saying in his name, but are they really worshiping God? Let's turn over now to 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. This is Peter's words talking about false teachers and their destruction. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their depraved conduct and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with their fabricated stories. So there were false prophets leading up to Jesus and Peter saying there will be and will continue to be throughout the age false teachers coming, saying that they're teaching about God, saying that they're teaching about Jesus, but not teaching from the gospel, not teaching and not true to what's written in Scripture. If you read on in 2 Peter chapter 2, we won't go there today, but it talks about these teachers. They keep on sinning. They entice believers according to the believer's own weakness. And we all have our own weakness. We talk about that. Some of us, our weakness is rage, anger. Some of us is bitterness, jealousy, greed, lustful thoughts, sexual immorality. There's all these different things that all of us are tempted differently. And so we have these people going around preaching and teaching messages. And sometimes they'll add Jesus in there, but they'll also kind of shy away from some scriptures that talk about these sins. Or they'll say that they're okay. They'll come out and just outright say that these things are okay. If Jesus didn't say it, we're not going to follow that. What Jesus says, what we follow. But that's not what we're supposed to do. Let's look at the last verse in our passage from this morning. So Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. So Paul is reminding the Galatians here, I'm not here to please you. So the message that I bring you, I'm not here to make you happy with it. I'm not here just to meet your needs or to say whatever you're doing in your life is good and okay. I'm not here to please the Jews. I'm not here to please the Jewish elders or the Pharisees. I'm here to please God. I'm here as a messenger of God to preach the gospel. And he's saying anybody who adds to these customs, traditions, or whatever to the gospel of Jesus is not trying to please God. So that's what he's saying here. He's pointing out, make sure as you're listening to sermons about the gospel, as you're listening to preachers and teachers, that you're not just taking everything they say for granted. You're following up with Scripture and you're studying on your own to know that what they're saying matches up with what Jesus taught. Do we still see preachers today trying to please men rather than God? On TV, we see it elsewhere. Local congregations, small congregations. I think we have that in a lot of places. Those sermons we talked about, the sermons of happiness, positivity, all things good without acknowledging Jesus and the gospel. I think there are plenty of preachers today that still do that, trying to appeal to man, please man rather than please God. What are some examples in the Bible of pleasing man rather than pleasing God? Can you think of any? The ones that came to mind for me was Matthew chapter 6. Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount and kind of gives three lessons in a row. They're all about pleasing man for the different things that we do rather than pleasing God. The first one he's talking about giving, and he gives to the needy. He says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 1, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So he's talking about your intent about giving. He's talking about your heart when you're giving. making sure that you're not giving so that other people are acknowledging you're giving. You want to give so that you are worshiping God, so that you are helping others out without announcing it. And then on down, the next section, he talks about prayer. In verse 5, it says, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray, standing in the synagogues and on street corners, to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. So when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. And then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep babbling on like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask them. Ask Him." So he goes on, this is where he gives the Lord's Prayer and gives us the example of how we ought to pray. And we notice it's a very short example. It's not a 30-minute prayer to God, and we're standing up on the street corner preaching while we're praying and being the chest, right? It's this brief prayer. God knows what you want. God wants you to talk to Him, but He doesn't want you to just continue on and on and on about these things that He already knows. In the next section, again, the same message, talking about not being prideful, not doing things to show yourself in front of others. It's talking about fasting, verse 16. "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they receive the reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." So we see three examples that Jesus gives us here, and I think a lot of it we still see today. We see these things and many others as people are doing things, and we see a lot on Facebook, boasting about themselves and things that they've done. See it in your circle of friends sometimes. People bragging about helping others out, things that they've done for everybody else. Saying things in the name of Jesus. We talked about that earlier. They say in the name of Jesus, and they give a statement after it or a prayer after it, but really all that is often just for public show, just so that people look at you instead of looking at God. So that was our first lesson. The lessons are broken up to make it kind of difficult to go into much more than what I have, because we're going to continue in verse 11 next week. So we look this week at the apostle and the gospel, and next week we are going to look more at Paul and his credentials, and we're going to talk about what makes him worthy to share the gospel. Anybody have any more comments on today's lessons?
The physical example of how God placed men rather than placing God was power. Except for Jesus. He knew better. He had been warned by his wife. He knew better. And yet, wanted to please man. He did it anyway.
The book doesn't use Pilate as an example, but it does talk about wanting. Some people will go against their own judgment, against their own desires, just because they want to please man. So that's really what Pilate did. He went against his own better judgment. He went against what he knew that he should be doing to please man.
The one I always think about is Jeroboam. Jeroboam, in order to keep people from going back and worshiping God back in Judea, his own self, he first set up his own Jewish religion and made it all, everything about it his own, so it would be convenient for his people to stay and do and serve God, in quotes, the way he thought they ought to do it, that he thought was good enough to match up with what God had said to Moses to do. And so he set up his own equal religion and could put it right on par with it, and nobody there knew the difference. But eventually, they refer to all throughout the Old Testament as the sin of Rehoboam. So it was a significant event that he got tagged with it as considered that as being the sin that actually took him into captivity and is an example to us. But you just don't make up your equivalency of what God wants.
I think that makes it hard for Christians today too, because there are so many different denominations that are straying away from strictly the Word or the Scripture, and doing a lot of things that go along with Scripture, but not necessarily focusing on.
Claim the same God, same religion, same beliefs, same everything, that just twisted up to make it convenient so that everybody will stay in their group.
Do you have something, Mark?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I was going to mention also, just the watering down of the word for inclusion, so that everyone can be included, to be able to call themselves Christians or whatever, or be part of the church. It's very prevalent, and it's happening more and more, because now today things are easier to talk about in the open that were maybe not easy to talk about years ago. And it's very open now about a church being okay with something, or, well, that's not bad, or it's not real bad. And they just, it's watered down, and that's something we have to be careful of.
Anyone else have any comments before we close?
Maybe we just need to preach more about Jesus, what He did for us, what happens when we believe in Him, put our faith in Him, instead of teaching church doctrine.
Back to basics.
I think, well, and the hard part of that, I think, is today you can't say something's wrong, because that hurts people's feelings. And God forbid we hurt anyone's feelings. And that's the problem. I think that's what the problem is. You can't say something's right or wrong without you yourself being condemned or being labeled as something just for saying something's wrong. That's not politically correct. I mean, that's not politically correct. So, and if you're not that, well, people want to throw rocks and stones at you.
It's that they came up with 4 things. One of those 4 was sexual immorality. So, the homosexual agenda, which is getting to the point where they want to bring legislation against preachers who are preaching against homosexuality. The Bible is very clear about sexual immorality, homosexuality. It's extremely clear. And we do have an obligation to speak what the Bible says. And you can't be afraid of, well, we're going to get sued if we preach that. We can't do that either.
Well, any thoughts?
We have to be careful with what and how we say things to people. I think a lot of times when we say things, we don't want to go back to the Bible and say, I'm not saying this. God is saying this. When it would be easier, probably sometimes, to go with what the world thinks instead of going back to what God says. But we still can be gentle in saying what God says.
Amen.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, we do have to love everybody. God loves everybody. He doesn't want anyone to perish. But we also have an obligation to teach the people love. So when we're teaching something that's controversial or hard, we have to try to keep in mind we're trying to bring about things. We're trying to bring it about. We're not trying to turn them away. We have to keep that in our tones and our inflections and stuff.
I think like to say, well, we preach to them because they put this huge sin in their life. That's not what it's about. It's about the love of God. You bring them to God, and yes, you have to teach them what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what God expects of us. But if they're introduced to that love and they participate in that love, then it's their decision to repent from whatever they're doing in their lives that shouldn't be.
Oftentimes, we're too much like Peter and jerk out the sword and cut somebody's head off in the name of Christ when we need to taste our words before we speak them.
Paul did that too, right? Paul still wasn't there to please man, but as he went to different areas, he kind of adjusted the way, his approach that he preached and teach those people to kind of get them to be accepting of him first so that they would then be accepting of the gospel. I think we have to do that as well. Anybody else have anything before we close? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God, we thank you so much for this congregation of believers that comes together, Lord, on Sunday morning to study your word, God. We thank you for the scripture that you've given us. Thank you for the opportunity to come together and to learn from your scripture, God, to talk through it and learn from each other from our different perspectives. We pray that everything that we do here, God, and everything that we preach and teach will glorify you and will line up with what you have laid out in the scriptures. Lord, as we go into our worship, we pray that you will clear our hearts and our minds. Let us focus on you. In Christ's name.